Welcome to the Dicenius Review. I'm Alexander Constantine, and this is the 21st episode of the podcast. And today, like usual, we have Mr. Fisto Sobani, our permanent guest, our permanent co-host, basically.
Hello there.
Hello. And we have a return guest. The fantastic Caleb Caudell is here with us. What's up, Caleb?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Right. So I just, today I'm kind of breaking the mold. Usually I make myself a pot of coffee and I drink all the coffee while we're having this conversation to kind of recreate my, French cafe experience. But today I made some tea. I made some Earl Grey tea because I think last week I drank like 4 cups and I wasn't able to sleep at all after me and Fisto talked for a few hours. In the scope of things, I don't really have much to talk about today. As an introduction, I usually like to have a kind of a generic or a little monologue about what I've been doing or thinking about. And honestly, I haven't really been doing much. I've been going to work, coming home. I did read that fantastic piece of long-form journalism, the book called Chaos, about the Manson murders and the way it was handled. I do want to spend some time doing probably a whole episode on just that book alone, or at least write a review on Substack. But other than that, I don't really have much anything that hasn't been put out. So I want to go on to the main topic. So Caleb, for you guys that are not familiar with him, is a fantastic fiction writer. He was a prior guest on episode 8. And I listened to episode 8 this morning and on my way home. And that was a good freaking episode, man. Right? Like, I really enjoyed it. I was like, wow, I made that. That was pretty good.
Yeah. No,
I've never listened to my own stuff, so I was like, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I also, I have the same attitude where when something is done, I usually don't look back over it, at least not soon after it's done.
Right, because it feels kind of gross, and I was like, I don't want to listen to myself. That's just fucking weird, right?
Yeah,
but I did, and I liked it. I was like, oh, this is a good episode. And since you came on an episode, I've gotten numerous emails and messages about people, how much they like your fiction.
Huh. Wow,
and it's awesome because I love your fiction, And even last episode, Fisto mentioned it, that he loved the essay you wrote on Substack. And I was like, oh, I know that guy. He was on the podcast.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was such a funny moment.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you liked it. That was surprising. I was expecting little to no reception for it because it was so long and it was something that I wanted to put out and had been thinking about and working on for quite a while, but it has been, at least so far, the most popular thing I've done on Substack.
Nice. I'm really happy to hear that. I mean, I was drawn to it. Who restacked? Oh, it was the Forest Rebel guy.
Yeah.
Who is just a very interesting man. And usually most of the things he says and posts, I usually find worth reading. Mm-hmm. And I began reading it, and it was such a clear diagnosis. It was such a clear explanation. I couldn't help but read it.
Yeah.
It's really that simple, man.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that it had that effect on you. Yeah, I mostly, at this point, I try not to say or write too much about technology in this, what has become a very banal, critical viewpoint of phones are bad, tech is bad, social media is depressing people and driving them apart. All these things are so obvious. I wanted to try to introduce a little clarity at a greater depth, looking not so much at what technology does to us, but what must already be the case in our lives over time for us to adopt these technologies and to lapse into these forms of compulsive behavior.
Right. I thought it was a fantastic essay, and I do want to talk more about it. But before we do that, I do want to introduce you more in more detail to the listeners that did not listen to the first episode. So for you guys, Caleb is a fantastic fiction writer, literary fiction. He recently just put out a new book called Hardly Working. I'm holding it here in my hand. It's got, the cover is like a forklift at a some kind of a shitty warehouse somewhere, and the back is a espresso tamp. What's it called? The where
That
you
is
put
a
the
portafilter.
yeah portafilter, right? And I do love me some espresso, and I used to work in a coffee shop many years ago, so I know we bonded over that. But the book is fantastic. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm so excited to read it. I'm looking forward to finishing this podcast and finishing up more tea and then hopefully finishing it today. But and I know coming up you're going to be doing the official book launch at a party in New York City. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be at Sovereign House in Manhattan on the 25th.
Okay, so if you're a New Yorker, go over to Sovereign House, and it's a bookstore, right?
I think it's a venue, a multi-purpose venue of sorts. I don't know. It might also have some books.
I keep on hearing about it a lot. Like it gets mentioned a lot by New York
Yeah,
people.
well, it's associated with that rather nebulous movement, Dime Square or Scene or what have you.
Right. The
Yeah.
the Red Scare, uh,
Yes,
that crowd.
uh, Honor Levy.
Oh, you know what? I want to talk about her.
Yeah, we can do that.
Have you read her book?
I haven't. No, I've what's the is it the first story from it, that passage that circulates so much, the about it was giving this, it was giving that.
Yeah, I think that is the first story from it.
Yeah.
I don't have my Kindle here anywhere, so I can't pull it up. But yeah, why don't you tell us about your book, man? Let's just introduce your book and let's give me a cool rundown of it.
All right, yeah. Hardly working. We are somewhat cheekily subtitling it semi-auto fiction. And that's in part to mock the preoccupation with autofiction and the way that that's classified and the critical perspective on that. But it is also a somewhat accurate and still sincere attempt at describing or setting the stage for what the book is, which is a little bit, it's not a strictly autobiographical account, but it is very heavily based on my experience and the timeline of my experience. Well, the movement from one job to the next, traversing this field of various dead end jobs and making all these movements that don't really add up or don't increase my quality of life or contribute to a stronger or better social world in any way, just bouncing around and being bounced at the same time by all of these economic technological forces and feeling ennui and trying to grapple with lack of purpose and the gap between personal interests and economic opportunities, paths available, things of that nature. And so it is very close to the bone. It's first person perspective pretty much all the way throughout. But then there are these major zooming outs. I increase the scope considerably at times and take a more philosophical perspective on what is happening at a
Right.
different scale. But it's, yeah, pretty gritty for the most part and personal. But I also wanted to try and not indulge in the worst excesses of what I see as this genre of memoir or autofiction or first person reporting.
Right. Well, I'm pretty much like 70% through with the book, and I think it's fucking outstanding, man. I I loved your short story writing, and this is up there. And I love I love your Substack, and a lot of the stuff in your Substack is very similar to Hardly Working. So if people out there read your Substack, the book is a lot more the same thing. And
Yes.
I noticed that it was published by Bonfire Books, and those guys are Australian, right? Do I know?
Yeah, that's right. Mhm.
Okay, how'd you end up with those guys?
Well, that was, I forget, I think it came from a tweet. I think early on after I'd finished the first novel that I wrote, The Neighbor, I had it done and not knowing how else to go about these things, I think I tweeted that I had a book, and if anyone was interested in publishing it, they should get a hold of me. And Bonfire had been reading a blog that I was writing on WordPress at the time, and they were already aware of me. So they reached out and then we set it up. And I think one of the guys, Lucas, it's either that he was born in Indiana or he lived some part of his adolescence in Indiana before moving to Australia. So there's that connection as well.
Right, and you're in Indiana right now, right?
Yes, I am in Indianapolis.
Right. So you're. I remember we talked pretty significantly about you being a Midwestern writer. Fisto over here, and he's probably eating or something. He's a
Not at the moment, but
he's a
yes.
freaking Midwesterner, from Ohio.
Rust
Uh-huh.
Belt, baby.
Yeah,
Let's
that's right.
go.
Yeah, I heard you guys are a cat and dog farm now. Don't even want to get into that nonsense.
Free range. Free range.
That's eating
Free range.
that's that
Cat and
American
dog. Yeah. We grill them over the Cuyahoga River.
All right,
Just set that thing on fire and does it real good.
look,
time out.
I'd eat cat and I'd eat dog if I had a chance. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I love both, and I have both. But if somebody's like, "You want to taste this?" I'll taste it.
I suppose if it's
I
already dead, yeah, I might give it
Yeah,
a
exactly.
whirl. Yeah.
Right.
I may refer to my cats as Plan B.
Yeah. Well, and in
So
a survival situation, I'm definitely eating cats.
yeah,
What's the most
absolutely.
heinously endangered animal you've ever eaten before?
I don't even know what is.
Heinously endangered?
Oh, I don't know what that people in the U.S. would find shocking. Or
Oh,
have you had
yeah.
horse
I
before?
don't I don't
Man,
know.
I'm not an adventurous eater quite like that. I don't know. I've never. I don't really live the Anthony Bourdain life.
So when I lived in Japan, okay, so let me tell you a quick story. So my wife is a horse. Well, you would consider she grew up a horse girl, and she owned a horse, and she loves horses. Me, I'm a urbanite. Okay,
Yeah.
horses scare me. They're like big dogs that you can't push away.
Yeah, they're
Um,
beasts.
yeah, so I'm always like weary around horse. Maybe because I'm from Transylvania, I'm a vampire, so I gotta beasts and dogs don't like me. But
Yeah.
so she's a horse girl, and she comes to me one day and she's like, "Oh my God, today I went to this izakaya and I ate horse sashimi." So I'm like, "You ate horse sashimi? Like, I thought you loved horses." She's like, "Yeah, but I love eating them too." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Yes, that's awesome." So we went, she took me back, she took me to the place, and we had a, raw horse. It's a red meat and it melts in your mouth. It's freaking delicious, right? Kind of pricey. They're not like the regular horses that like you ride. They're like
Yeah.
farm raised to be eaten. So I guess they're like fat horses or something. I don't know, but it was pretty
What's a
good.
what's a typical cut of a horse?
I
What
you
do you?
know I don't know. I know they're pretty. It's pretty popular in France, right? I think somewhat
Yeah.
a common thing in France, but in Japan to eat it like sashimi. It's like it was just like really thinly sliced raw, slices of meat. It almost looked like bacon, and it was very cold, and like you just put it in your mouth and it melts, and it was good. I mean, it's not something that I'm going to obsess about and eat ever again. But funny enough, that's not the worst thing I've ever eaten when it comes to like cute, funny animals. I was working in Papua New Guinea a few years ago. It was just super remote island off the coast of Papua New Guinea, and the hotel I was staying at was more of a like a refugee camp than an actual hotel. And there was a chef there he'd always make all these crazy food using local stuff, and there wasn't a lot of stuff, so he did his best. And one day he calls me over. It's like a Saturday. He's like, "Oh, come here, you got to try this." And he's got like a plate of like shish kebabs, like meat on a stick. And he's like, "Oh, try it." I'm like, "What is it?" He's like, "Oh, just try it." And I took this shish kebab and I bit into it, and it was a very interesting white meat. It was like half fish, half chicken. It was like sea chicken, right? It was good. It was very tender, juicy. Um, Interesting taste, right? And I was like, well, what the hell? What is this? What is it? And then I realized that the dude fed me like the big giant endangered sea turtle.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like,
The
I'm making,
leather back
yeah,
turtle or
yeah,
something.
one of those giant turtles, man. And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
man, those things are, I can't eat this, like,
Yeah. I think most of their babies are snatched up as they try to make it to the ocean from the beach or something. And
right.
yeah.
It's probably like a crime that I ate that right there. So I'm probably
Now
gonna
you know
get,
why it's endangered.
right. I'm like, great, thanks, bro. I
Oh, that
ate
was delicious. Oh no, I
freaking,
ate the last one
yeah. I
ever.
mean, okay, listen, okay, if there was like one endangered primate, like some kind of a monkey or something like that, and I had it, I'd probably eat it and like make,
Yeah, man. I mean, it's the only one left. Like there ain't nobody.
yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
be the last person to eat, like, how the
There you
dodo
go.
bird went extinct because like sailors ate all of them because they were fat and juicy and delicious. So yeah, I'd
Yeah.
probably eat a dodo, man. Come on. But yeah.
Yeah. It sounds great.
All right, so back to your book, man. A little bit of autofiction, a little bit of just pure fiction. What I like about it is that it is a, and this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing I really like about your writing and about the topics that you've read about is that you're very middle to lower middle class perspective, and you don't get that a lot. More and more, the fiction scene has become dominated by upper class MFA people that are, obviously on some sort of a parental money support, which there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But the perspective of the, middle age, late, with late 30s, early 40s to 50, white Midwestern male, it just doesn't exist in fiction anymore, right? And
Yeah.
like, I went to Barnes and Noble a while back, and I kind of did a little experiment, and I went to the new shelf, like the new release shelf and the fiction shelf that they have at the front of the store,
Yeah.
and there was not one like novel written by somebody that looks like you or me
Right.
whatsoever. You know, I mean, there's like Stephen King and stuff, but
Yeah.
those guys are like
Their
grandfathered in,
grandfather.
right?
Yeah, Stephen King doesn't count. That doesn't
Yeah,
count.
not at all. They're
We don't
totally.
claim him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't put guys like us on the Barnes and Noble new release shelves.
I mean, God, like I don't think we'd even end up in Barnes and Noble. What's funny is like sometimes in Barnes and Noble you find a book that you're like, this one slipped through the cracks to end up here. Like
Yeah,
I found Celine's Journey to the End of the Night at
yeah,
Barnes and Noble. I'm like, oh man, nobody threw this one out because I'm sure they would if they knew about it.
yeah. Right. They're not always paying that much attention. You will occasionally see something like that. Yeah, I've seen Celine at a Barnes and Nobles. And they have down the center classics too that you probably shouldn't buy them at Barnes and Noble, but they will still have book. They'll have Dostoevsky and Tolstoy and shit like that too. But yeah, that's all grandfathered in. They're not featuring new releases by living people that are of certain demographics.
Right. Unless you're like Welbeck or, and then even Welbeck, you can always say he was kind of grandfathered in and he's French.
Yeah.
So he probably skates by on his name alone.
At this point, yes. And we're talking about something, even Welbeck, for as contemporary as he is, when he actually broke through, it was just before, of course, things were moving in this direction. But yeah, he got in, I don't know, 10 or 15 years later. I'm not sure if it would have been the same situation.
Right. And I, you know, in the last few months, you read so many articles about people lamenting the state of literature, lamenting why aren't men reading? Why don't men read? And then you go to the bookstore and there is nothing for us to read that isn't a classic or from 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And, you have a industry that has completely turned its back on me basically and on us,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know what to say about that. It's a rough one because it used to be that men read a lot and men used to read a lot, and now it's it's such an uphill battle to get everybody I know to even pick up a book because it's like I'm not interested in it. I'm just not interested in that. And then you do take
Yeah.
somebody to Barnes and Noble, and you're like, cool, read the. There's 100, you know, hardcovers of some, female-driven thriller, and that's all there is. That's all there is.
Yeah,
It's like,
and fantasy. There's a lot of fantasy. There's a lot of fan fiction spin-offs on popular series. Young adult stuff is big. A lot of it does seem to be very popular among women. Women have adopted this identity. Not all women, of course, but there's a subset of women who have adopted this identity of reader, very
right.
enthusiastic, voracious reader, and they read it. I don't know everything that they read. Frankly, I don't pay too much attention to this because even being aware of it has a negative effect on your brain. But it seems that they are pretty invested in fantasy and sci-fi and young adults and also very female centric stories about the struggles of being a woman and
Yeah, and it it's the whole book talk culture and the
yeah,
whole I'm a reader as a identity, which
yeah,
is very interesting. I mean, and then we to kind of go back to your essay about our
I was just thinking
insane
that.
connection to everything. There's this kind of just insane level of everything needs to become an identity. Everything needs to be like, you have to be that person, Like,
yeah,
you can't just play video games, you have to be a gamer. You can't read
yes,
books, you have to be the girl that reads, who has an Instagram, that posts pictures of her Instagram. And I only read fantasy, or I only read blah, blah, blah. And I only read history books. And it's so tedious and stilted, in my opinion. So how does fiction like yours fit into this world? I mean, what do you think?
I think that for the most part, it does not fit into it. And there, if that's the case, if I'm beginning with that, with the recognition that what I'm trying to do does not fit in, then that leaves me with a few options, right? I can either try harder to fit in, I can be intentional about that and try to sculpt my material so that it, and also the way that I live in general, so that more people are more likely to take an interest in what I'm doing and I can receive all the benefits that follow from that. Or I can remain resolute and maintain the integrity of knowing that there are certain things I would like to accomplish. And even if I fail, I'm not going to stray from the path in trying to accomplish them, not to gain followers or to increase my material wealth or to gain some sort of more vulgar material, economic, social advantage. I don't know. I don't think that what I do has broad appeal in today's terms. I think it has broad appeal in a deeper sense, in a more trans historical sense. At least that's what I'm attempting. But as far as exciting the broad grouping of people who like to read, who identify as readers, many of them women, the more vocal and enthusiastic supporters and proponents of reading and books and book culture and all that nonsense, I don't think that I'm going to make much headway with them. And I think that's actually to my credit for various reasons.
Right, I
Well,
agree.
I was just thinking, like, growing up and when I was in school and learning and ever since, wasn't the goal to be the artist that nobody read your shit until after you were dead?
Yeah, no,
Like you don't hit it until long
yeah.
after you're gone. Wasn't that always kind of the long term? Yeah, that's the real stuff.
Never
Yes,
sell out. Never sell out.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Right. What or am I high over here, or did I
No,
not know
no,
what I'm
no. You're
talking
right.
about?
You're
No,
absolutely right.
and the never selling out ethos is almost even the more superficial version of what has been a much longer standing trend of people who choose this way of life or who are called to it, expecting hardship, expecting obscurity, expecting not to be appreciated in their own time or to be properly rewarded for what they're doing. It's on an entirely different track.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it would almost have to be. I mean, the thing I keep thinking lately, and it goes with what you were saying, Caleb, like get ahead in this world? Are you fucking high?
Yeah,
Absolutely
right.
not. Have you seen
Yeah.
this world? It's
Right.
raging idiots the whole way down. Like
Yeah.
I might as well just get my dick out, right? Like no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, like give up writing, open up an OnlyFans for my feet. All right, that I'll get ahead.
Yeah, if you are overly concerned about your prosperity or your popularity and you are trying to write and you're trying to write honestly and reach this standard of excellence that stands against this longer period of time, you're doing that in literature, but you want popularity and wealth, it's you really can't spend too much, you can't waste too much time worrying about that. You're at cross purposes. You really should be doing something else.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so much better things to do than slave away over words in your dark, filthy chamber with your 12 cats,
Yeah.
which is kind of like my life, sort of. But, um, but I mean, one of the things I say over and over is like what I think that the aim of literature, the aim of the novel, and any work of art is truth, right? And I don't mean like, oh, every novel has to be this serious like novel, but every work of art that is good, even the most frivolous art that is good, has truth behind it. And that's why I like your writing, because it's a truth about a socioeconomic like status and personal status that really speaks to me directly. I understand like the frustrations of the character or you, because I've had those jobs, shit, I have that job right now where I go in and I'm like, crap, I'm back to the shit factory again, and, we feel that. I mean, we're approaching middle age, and I don't even know what counts as middle age. I guess I'm middle age now that I'm 41, maybe not. I don't know. But,
Yeah, I think we're middle aged. I think that
yeah,
I think we
fuck.
qualify.
And you sit there and you reevaluate, your life, and you're like, oh, what am I doing? Like, 20 years ago, I was going to be a rock star and I was going to be on a yacht and shit. And 30 years ago, I was going to be an astronaut. And here I am, getting towards the end of my boring career. And it's just fuck, like, I feel that, I mean, we've all had those jobs where like, no matter how hard I work, nobody gives a shit about me, and it's an economic truth. It's just a reality of the situation. And, you don't get that in a lot of literature. And you used to have the Rick Basses and, McGuanes and stuff that kind of went there in their short fiction, but it's disappeared. It's been replaced by whatever the fuck the New York publishing houses are putting out. And honestly, it doesn't speak to me at all. And your work speaks to me. Even somebody like Delicious Tacos, who, writes his, basically, plenty of fish / whatever dating app fiction.
It's erotica.
yeah, like Chud Erotica is what he writes, and it's
Wait,
still
what's
real.
this guy's name?
You're not familiar with Delicious Tacos?
So delicious taco chud erotica. Is that a sentence that we just fuck me, man? What the fuck?
We are coining over here.
Oh my God. Why?
All right,
Oh.
okay. So I didn't realize you were a Philistine here, Fisto.
Listen. You gave me Neuromancer. Okay, that is setting the bar really goddamn high. So you better go yard with every book you recommend.
All right.
Me from
So
now on. That's all I'm saying, brother.
For Fisto over here, who's uninitiated with Mr. Delicious Tacos, right? Delicious Tacos is he is an anonymous writer. He's an anonymous writer that I believe he's from Los Angeles, and he started writing. What was that website that everybody was dating on before, like Tinder and stuff?
Well, there was Match and OkCupid.
OkCupid, that's the one he wrote on. He started writing fiction.
Oh, I see now. Okay.
He would I think he would serialize, experiences of his dates.
Yeah.
Off of, OkCupid onto like the OkCupid blog. And for people too
Oh, I
young to
see.
know they're listening, or too cool to ever use OkCupid,
Well, internet.
OkCupid was a dating site, but it also had a lot of like social media elements. Like it had like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, OK Cupid was the place where you could actually talk to people before you talked to
right,
Yeah,
them.
it prefigured the apps of
Yes.
current time.
yeah, I don't
Yes.
even know.
It,
It's
it
probably
it's
still
what marked the
around.
transition from meeting people offline is scary to meeting
Yeah,
people offline is actually kind of racy and in vogue.
Right. And
yeah.
I actually used it, never to any good effect though. I was too much of a spaz to really like put
I
any effort into it.
yeah, I used it, yeah, back in the day a little
I
bit,
met
but
one quality girl off of it, and that was it. And then it was done.
yeah, it was still a little. It was the beginning of OkCupid. It was still slightly avant-garde, if I may
Yeah,
say.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Right. I think I used it in 2008, 9 kind of era. And
Yeah,
yeah,
Man,
there
that's
were
so
some
long
interesting
ago.
people. Everybody, I think I still remember, somewhere I have my OkCupid uh, photo, and I'll post that because it's pretty
Oh
funny. I
God.
think, right, the one I used, and I think my tagline, was like, I've got the body of a heavy reader that likes short walks on concrete,
yeah, right. Just
and
already subverting expectations.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then like I was like, listen, I just want to drink and fuck. I think that was pretty
You
honest in
sound
mine.
nothing like your bio.
Right? You're like, what?
No,
But
you changed.
in that time of my life, I was doing a lot of traveling. So I would meet these girls. I'd go on a date and they're like, oh, I love you. I hit it off. We're definitely going to hang out. And I would be gone for 2 months and I'd come back and she's like married.
Yeah,
And
well,
I'm like, fuck,
Oh, you
man.
were
And
that guy.
I'm like,
Nice.
okay, Um, so
You were the
that,
bouquet. You were the bridal bouquet.
yeah, I was like, cool,
They caught
man.
you and got married. There you go.
One time I just went out on a date with a girl whose name was Alex. And the only reason I went out on a date with her is because her name was Alex. And I thought that'd be cool if like we started dating and she had the same name I did.
Uh,
I
Terrible.
was drinking a lot back then. All right. It's just
Yeah, no fucking kidding. I'm just kidding, buddy. I'm
that
just kidding,
was
buddy. I got no room to judge, believe me.
but back to Delicious Taco. So he put out a book of like a collection of his stories called The Pussy.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
yeah.
it's fantastic. It's
You're kind of selling me on this guy now. I
No,
was
he's good.
initially hesitant, but once I heard OK Cupid, I went, oh, it's irony.
no,
I see.
it's really good. He did an interview on Red Scare maybe a year ago, and he was
Wow.
pretty funny. He's pretty big in the kind of indie scene. I know he's like a pretty liberal dude from what I gather in the scope of
Yeah,
things. But
fairly locked, I think, in many ways. Yeah, is a little bit of it's like a slackened, laissez-faire kind of attitude. He doesn't give a shit what people do.
right, like he talks about going to like Thailand and sleeping with prostitutes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's hedonism.
Yeah, he's a total hedonist. He's basically
You don't
what,
say.
yeah, a lot of, he's, I would say, kind of a literary version of BAP in a way. He definitely
Okay.
fits into that kind of, because he got big on the internet, and a lot of the BAP crowd tends to also be fans of his. But
Yeah,
but he's a good writer. He's a fantastic writer.
That helps. That helps.
He might be actually older than us, to be honest, though, based on what I'm kind of gathering.
he's in his late 40s.
Yeah, he's definitely in his late 40s. And he's not I wouldn't say he's a Gen Z writer at all. He's
No,
definitely
no,
a
no.
millennial or a late Gen Xer, to be honest.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's fun.
But
Well,
he's somebody that probably sold hundreds of thousands of copies of his book on Amazon, but no damn New York agency would go anywhere near his stuff.
no, that will not happen in the current climate for as long as it stays the way that it is.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Which
and
is
he
wild because he would 50 years ago he would be a bestseller probably.
yeah, there's potential for
Yeah.
that. I could see that.
Right. I've
Delicious
actually had
Taco, the movie.
I have a few acquaintances that do work in the publishing industry, New York, big, and some of them read your stuff and they've said that about 20, 30 years ago, you'd be a bestseller if you would have submitted to them before, today's era. So take that as a compliment for sure, Caleb.
Well, yeah, it goes down nice and bitter like it always does.
Right. 30 years too late, motherfucker. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
fuck me, right?
Hey,
Right.
on the bright side, in 30 years you'll be dead, and somebody will be like, Caleb caught this guy's
This
good.
guy was good, yeah.
This guy, man, we got to get this. We got to call this guy's estate. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah,
Right.
right. Let's
Right.
unearth some material.
Hey,
Yeah.
on the bright side, it won't go down as bitter because you'll be dead.
No,
So
I know that I am looking forward to that. Don't get me wrong.
Just death.
Being dead.
yeah. Nobody bothers you. Nobody bothers
Yeah,
you. I
Yeah,
can't,
it's
can't
it's
wait.
so
fucking
nice.
quiet. It's
Yeah.
quiet.
Quiet, man.
It's
Goddamn peace and
cool.
quiet.
Soil is cool.
Yeah,
Hopefully
man.
under a nice shady tree somewhere.
Plenty of friends. You're a great listener.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can just read in the dark. But anyway, getting back for a moment, it's actually not as much of a digression as I think to mention Delicious Tacos because I have to admit, it sounds a little bit silly given the name he writes under, but he was a pretty big influence on me in right around the time when I started writing more consistently. I had made it a daily habit. I didn't necessarily have grand aspirations, but it was around the time when I was reading. This is before apps. This is when to be online, you had to be on a computer pretty much.
Right.
Yeah.
And you needed a browser and you needed a desktop or maybe a laptop, but even laptops were a little bit more advanced for the time. And blogging was the closest thing that we had to rapid fire exchanges that you see on Twitter or even Substack now with notes. And I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I became aware of Delicious Tacos. This was early in his own career when he first started putting out stuff on WordPress. Because when I was looking at these things, WordPress was the site. Maybe there was blog. There's something like blog.com, I think was also a
It was
server.
Blogger. It was the Google
Blogger,
blog.
yeah. But then WordPress was the other big one.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I found out about Delicious Tacos and I would read his stuff. And it was very refreshing to me. It seemed honest, but not just honest in this raw, undisciplined way, but it had that craft to it as well. I could recognize it that he actually was skilled in the way he built his arguments and observations and wove them all together. So I appreciated that, but I also liked that the grittiness of what he was talking about and that the frank discussion or observations on male sexuality, male desire is also something that was it really has been lacking all throughout my life, but that was also very stimulating.
Right.
And
And and then you actually nailed it right there. One of the things is on the surface, Delicious Tacos is writing comes off as like almost like frat boy kind of perv
yeah,
type of stuff, but you read it and you're like, oh man, this is deep stuff. He is touching on something that is completely lacking in modern literary discourse, which is male sexuality. The fact that men want to have sex with women or with
yes.
guys or whatever.
As quickly as possible.
Right. And there's lots of insecurities and there's a lot of fear in it and there's a lot of like status anxiety.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
and then he writes stuff about like, his the stories about the cat and it's like heartbreaking. He writes
Right.
these like heart-wrenching like, things about male loneliness and, a lack of purpose in life. And
Yes.
it's real good stuff. So if you're not familiar with it, I would definitely pick up the pussy, which fuck, I hate saying such a.
What do
But
you recommend?
that's his thing, right?
Yeah, right. Well, and one thing that he is similar to Welbeck in some ways, and I don't want to necessarily just mash them together completely, but I think one thing that is similar about the two of them is that, yeah, superficially, they're very crass, they're vulgar, they're writing about these obscene sex acts and obsessions and cravings, but they both of them very skillfully weave in these glimpses of a much deeper and more sensitive humanity and a feeling of frustration, which isn't just reactive, but which gets almost at the core of human experience and longing for things which are impossible.
I don't mean to be
Right.
crass also, but it sounds like you're talking about the clarity after you get off.
Well, yes, right. And the
Why am I
depth.
here? I don't want to buy a Porsche. What am I doing? I'm going home.
No, you know what? A lot of delicious tacos and Welbeck's not work basically reads like post nut clarity. To be honest,
Yeah,
Yeah.
musings of a post nut kind of like thought pattern. I mean, yeah, you're right about Welbeck. I think my favorite Welbeck novel is A Possibility of an Island,
yeah,
and that one comes off as on the surface it's a story about a horny guy that's sleeping an older horny guy that's sleeping with a younger kind of slutty Spanish girl, I think. And
yes,
but there's these complex themes of religion and finding
yeah,
kind of immortality.
right.
And it
The end of
goes
humanity.
right, it goes into sci-fi and craziness, and
Mhm.
it's a really powerful novel that is kind of wrapped in this postmodern crassness almost.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, like this type of stuff, it's like it's so outside the mainstream, yet it is pretty mainstream because the majority is if you're an online person or if you've traversed the dark cyber sphere of the alternative world, which is kind of where we tend to be on the edges of. You're familiar with Delicious Tacos if you've been on Twitter or X or whatever. You're familiar with him, Red
yeah,
Scare, and that kind of stuff. And it's in a way it's exciting. There's a part of me that I think I want to rail against the overall unfairness of the publishing industry. You're like, why aren't you publishing these great writers I know, and you're not even giving them a chance. You won't even read them. You sclerotic old fucks and cat ladies, right? But at the
uh,
same time, I kind of like that they're not in a way
yeah,
because it does allow a more, to lack of a better words, a more indie punk rock vibe to it where it really becomes more about the actual message, the actual work, than about, the old 1990s era, like Penguin Books giving you tours around the country and all that stuff that, writers from that era, like, Donna Tartt and, what's his name? Bret Easton Ellis. God, they were like superstars and everybody knew about them. And every article just, sucked them off basically. And then you get this era where you're just like, nobody's going to even read my stuff,
yeah,
like in the establishment. And it's kind
right.
of cool in a way. It's kind of punk rock.
Yeah. Well, I maintain I've held this line for a little while now, and I think I will continue to do so. But obscurity can be a major advantage, and it's not something you necessarily want to relinquish too quickly. There are many benefits to not gaining too much attention too quickly.
Right.
It, attention is something that is very volatile, and you have to be careful in even your intentions, even in your heart, in desiring it too strongly. It's not that I wouldn't go as far as to say we're still human. It does feel nice to be recognized. I'm not saying there's no healthy pursuit of that, but you do have to be careful. It's nice not I would rather be found by people who are in a certain sense already looking rather
Yeah.
than be have someone else beat me over other people's heads. I don't know. I just notice, I mean, maybe this is slightly digressive, but the bigger someone gets, the faster, the more it invites a very thoughtless response.
Right. Right. And I
I
mean
think
that's your traditional F. Scott Fitzgerald problem, right? The peaking too early, peaking too soon.
Yeah.
Mm,
I think Caleb, you're on the right track for sure. Definitely hold to what you're saying there. To be underestimated is a gift. It's
yes.
not something to be taken lightly. And, with what you were saying there, attention, at least to me, like I got some attention at school today, just a tiny little bit. It was good, but I think humility demands that you consider it feedback. It's information. It's not
Yeah.
there to stroke my ego. It's to go, okay, good. That's working. I was hoping that would work. And it
Yeah.
is, it looks
Hmm.
like. And then just let it ride and move on and get back to fucking work.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, why do I not like being in charge? Because I'd rather get things done.
Right.
Yes.
That's kind of what attention is. That's the double-sided, that's the double-sided sword there, the double-sided whatever the hell you want to call it.
Yeah,
It's
well,
the thing that takes you out.
that's what I have in mind is that it's better if you can be strategic about it and not just
Yes.
desire to have as much thrown upon you as quickly as possible and to continue growing exponentially or whatever. Yeah, you want to be deliberate in how you court attention. You don't want to be stirring up the wrong people at the wrong time. I know
Yeah.
this is this sounds a little esoteric, maybe, but as far as growth strategies go, I mean, that's just something, yeah, that you're better off not paying too much attention to or wanting all
Yeah,
that.
I think also that to tie back to the essay that brought us all together, talking about the online space, you brought up, things grow too quickly and there's this hateful response to it. Well, of course there is, because anything that pops up, it's all rage bait. It's all
Yeah,
rage bait. And anything there's literally billions of people out there right now that are programmed to the moment they see anything on their phone, it's rage. Clearly
yeah.
this is here because I need to be mad at it.
Right. Well, and
Huh?
yeah, right. There is that training or that programming through the feedback loops of the emotional centers and the device, but then it's almost as if even more broadly, I being suddenly having something thrust upon you is on some level, and it might be borderline unconscious, it's a little bit irritating. So just
Yeah.
having anything that you are not finding, anything that doesn't stem from a more organic impulse, it's I'm looking at something, I don't know what I'm going to find. Oh, here's this in my face now. There's
Mm.
almost some automatic hostility there.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you read much of either of you guys read Coleman, Justin Coleman, the convict? He writes all those prison stories and all that stuff.
I've read a
Yeah.
few of
A
yeah.
few. Yeah. A few.
I was just thinking of him because he does a great job of explaining how thin the barrier is between, our cerebral cortex and the little lizard brain underneath it. Like you're
Yeah.
feeling that little bit of because there is something wrong. It's your
Yeah.
instinct telling you, fuck this guy. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just bringing that up to agree with
No,
what
that's
you're
a good
saying
point.
there. That there is,
Uh,
there is something in there that triggers us,
Right. So you don't want to be an image or a brand necessarily that is primarily playing that role where you're just
hmm
popping up at
Yeah,
people
right.
because oh you're big now. So you're part of that wave
You're
of
on the wrong end of whack-a-mole.
yeah, provocation. You really do it's so much better. And of course there are so many layers to figuring out how to do this, but you really almost need to position yourself in a place where people have to take several steps to find you.
right.
Hmm.
You have to be esoteric. They have to earn
Well,
it.
yeah,
You
you
must go
need
on a journey to
well,
find
I know
you.
it sounds a little corny, and of course it can be funny, but that is almost that is pretty much what I'm talking about, where yeah, we are putting material out, right? We're not renouncing this way of life altogether. But even if we're going to do it, why not be somewhat intentional? Why not try to put things in places where they're more likely to be seen by people who have some pre-understanding of what you're trying to do? And it's not that you only want sycophants or anything, but you just don't want people drifting along who have all of these hostile viewpoints.
It kind of
Right.
makes me think. So Alex and I think on every podcast have to bring up Ernst Jünger in the Forest Passage,
Oh
and I
yeah.
think, and maybe what you're describing is not that we're doing it intentionally, just you find the direction in the forest that you want to go,
Yeah.
so that is naturally going to select for the kinds of people that might follow you in that
Right.
direction.
I think that can be completely natural and
Yeah,
unconscious and fluid and just something that intuitively you grasp. But it's
yeah.
something that I have become more conscious of more, and I think it can become not only is it an unconscious adaptation, but I think it can become an intentional, a practiced art also once it becomes conscious.
That's
Right.
really interesting to me. That actually hits on a personal level. Alex and I have talked about this briefly, but I kind of feel like for the past few years I've been on like the prodigal son arc. Like I might start going back to mass very soon, and I found a parish locally that I think I want to attend, and it's really kind of reconnecting to things that I got from my mother's side of the family. but the
Yeah.
idea of where I'm going in the direction I'm going, but then consciously cultivating it, that's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot about this a lot, and the way I look at, my own writing, and my own material that I put out, like this podcast, for example. I am not invited to the party, and that's the truth is, right? Like, I don't want to be one of those guys that endlessly harps on about, "Oh, I'm never gonna get uh I'm never gonna get like published because I'm a white guy from Europe and blah blah blah, and I'm straight, and I can go on and on about all this grievance stuff, right? To be
Right.
honest, I don't want to go to that party, because those kind of people, they don't like me, I don't like them, we're all cool, right? So
Well, and you would just be playing their game. You'd be kowtowing to them. No
Right. So
reason
I
for playing
started
that. I'm
my
not going
own
to come my,
party. Yeah,
yeah.
so I started my
Right.
own
Exactly.
party. And
Exactly.
you guys are in my own party. And one of the things about starting my own party is that you often see a lot of this like online writing advice. It's like, oh, how to appeal to your readers, how to appeal to your mass readers, how to make your fiction more understandable to everybody. And you know what? Fuck everybody, okay? I don't want to make my work more understand. I wanted my work to be like more obscure. Okay, I want people to be like, man, what is this schizo on? Like what's going on here, right? I want people to like somewhat work for it, because if you work for it, you earned it in a way. Um,
Yeah.
and I was thinking about that. And the other day I was thinking about the name of this podcast, the Dicenius Review, right? It's a fucking hard name. It's a horrible name for a podcast, okay? It is complicated. It is a reference to Dicenius, or pronounced Deceneus, which was basically a wizard during the Trajan Wars in Dacia. He was Decibel, the king of Dacia, is kind of like, he's basically a Merlin figure. Is like the mythology is that he brought monotheistic worship of Zalmoxis to the Dacians. Anyways, it's obscure, it's weird, it's hard to spell, and I'm like, maybe I should change the podcast name or something. And I was like, you know what? No, fuck that. I'm not going to change it. I'm going to make it even harder,
Yes.
right?
Right. You
Like,
should,
Stick with it, man. Stick with it. Just hang on to it. Screw it.
yeah.
well,
Well, there should be layers, right? It should be possible. Now, as a title like that, it's possible to still follow what you do and enjoy it, but you could also not pay any attention to that title whatsoever. Or you could look into it and then you could learn something. And then from there, who knows where you go? There should be multiple layers of opportunities for further learning in what you do.
right, I agree, and I think that, and I'm not talking about being obscure for obscurity's sake. There is a tendency, and there's been a tendency in art and kind of culture as a whole, to dumb everything down, to simplify and to over-explain, and you
Right.
see this in a lot of movies, right? Movies tend to be movies and books too. They tend to over-explain. It's all about the background information.
Yeah, the world building.
If you guys remember horror movies from our era, like the 80s, the late 80s, the movies we grew up watching, you know what the fuck they were talking about, like
Yeah,
there
right.
was Jason and he stabbed fuckers, like there was no like deep psychological explanation, and there wasn't like a backstory about little Jason
Yeah.
getting molested or whatever, and because of
Yeah.
that he got mad.
Oh, I feel bad for him now. He
Right.
needed better services. He needed more programs. No, but even something like no, it's what you're talking about is very true. But even I'm thinking of a movie like Predator too, where really on the face of it, what is that scenario? It's what is the background? Like, why the fuck is any of that
Yeah,
happening?
why are
But
they even there? Like, what the hell's going on? It doesn't matter. It
yeah,
doesn't matter. And that's why that's one of the best action movies of all time. It's very simple. There's no backstory. If Predator was made today, we would have an hour of exposition about the socioeconomic plight of the fucking people living in the jungle,
yeah.
and then some kind of a comment on masculinity and big game hunting in the
Well, actually,
Predators.
the Predator is a marginalized member of his own tribe who is only perpetuating these toxic
Cycle
characteristics.
of violence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cycle of oppression.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, of poverty and oppression. He's a low-ranking marginalized other predator who's been sent to our planet to, yeah, carry out this ritualized violence.
Right.
Uh,
And it's so fucking stupid. And it drives me nuts.
yeah,
So one of
I,
the things, one of the things we do, in my domain in my house is, we read at
I'm
night.
sorry.
All right. We
I'm
read at
sorry.
night. Huh?
Sorry, just the Predator thing got me thinking. Now I want to do the same thing for Terminator.
Right.
oh yeah.
Sorry. Go on.
Well, listen, okay, about the Terminator. All right. Everybody likes Terminator 2. I think Terminator 2 sucks and hasn't held
It's
up at all.
what?
Well, they're
Fucking
both
high.
they're both entertaining. Terminator, the first one and the second one, they're entertaining, but they're a little flimsy. I don't think.
Okay,
Well, I mean,
the
yeah.
first one is better. Okay, first of all, the first one's better because
I will
Arnold
agree
doesn't
with that. I
talk.
will agree. Yeah,
Yeah,
I will agree that the first one, the tension alone is
yeah. It's a
cool as
horror
hell.
movie. It's a horror
I
Oh,
would,
it's
movie.
so good. Yeah.
Arnold
Oh my
doesn't
God.
talk. There's
yeah,
that
Yeah.
freaking epic bar scene where, like, the techno kind of like new wave club she goes into, where she
Your
runs
clothes,
into.
your gun, and
Yeah,
your
and
bike.
and then there's a sex scene with '80s boobs in it that
Hell
is
yeah, bro.
completely out of nowhere. So I can never watch that movie with my kid until she's like 30, and
Oh, she's like 30.
then Terminator 2 comes out and it's this fucking daddy issues fucking thing with, like, John Connor, like, hasta la vista, baby, and all these corny ass 90s lines. And it's so cringy right now. Like, okay, Terminator 2 has the great Sarah Connor stuff in it, right? The
Oh yeah, dude.
hospital scene with Sarah Connor, it's badass. I love it. It's fantastic. But the whole fucking robot daddy thing, it's just like, I tried watching it like like 2, 3 years ago, and it just made me cringe with like embarrassment for
what
every.
does he what does he say at one point? Now I know why you cry.
Now I know why you cry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
literally.
the fucking thumb going down in the lava, the forge or whatever. I can't do that. It's
How in the ever loving hell could he already knew cybernetically why people cry, but what the fuck did he mean by that?
right. I mean, just look. I think a lot of people have a fond love of that movie from their childhood because it probably had the action figures and stuff. And
Yeah.
I
And
did.
it's
I just like the T-1000. I just like the T-1000 stabbing
yeah,
people in the face. I mean,
Right.
that was
people
freaking
were
lit.
yeah.
Woo! Just right through the nose. Fantastic.
I think that really did blow people's pants off.
Right, the whole Wolfie thing. Your family's dead or whatever the fuck he
Yeah,
says.
there
Yeah.
were some cool little tricks like that, but it James Cameron though, come on now, he is such a ham just in general. I don't know why he can't be taken that seriously. It's pure popcorn. It's summer. It's air conditioning. It's
I'm willing.
spectacle.
I'm willing to bet that's what he intended for the first Terminator. Nobody noticed, and he was just smart enough not to say anything.
Right.
Yeah, okay, that was a more artistic
Man, this
film.
is the most horror thing. Yes, that's entirely what I
Oh
meant.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, of
dude. The
course.
whole
Of course
horror.
it
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, look, it was like I said.
He
I
just didn't
think
have a
that,
budget.
dude,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm gonna get crap for this. I'm gonna get crap for this
Dude, I've
on
already given you
Substack.
crap for this, but
Right,
it's all
but
right. It's all
look,
right.
we rewatched those movies back to back, and Terminator 1 is the vastly superior movie because it doesn't have annoying ass John Connor freaking Wesley Crushering all over the place, you know?
Yeah. No, it's not as kid friendly, and that's one of the major flaws of Terminator 2 is that it's obvious, shameless pandering to a younger, broader audience.
Well,
Terminator,
they wanted to make a buck. They wanted to make all the
yeah,
money the first one didn't.
right, of course. And I guess if that's what you want to do, then that they went for it.
Yeah.
But even the first Terminator, I know I'm gonna play the Cretan here, or maybe I really am one, but I can't get past the time travel thing and how
Oh, see, Alex and I come from a long love of Star Trek, so time travel, like you turn your brain off the moment that shows up.
I
You
know
just
Right.
time
click,
travel
click,
offends
done. All right,
something
whatever,
in
doesn't
me.
matter.
I know I can't. There's some, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's Germanic or something, but I have some insistence on taking time more seriously than that. And I
It's
can't.
time. You don't just fuck with time. Come
Yeah,
on.
if they're
Yeah, no.
sending someone back to kill this figure, if there's the fact that they're sending them back means they failed to do it.
Yeah, just send a fucking nuke or
Because
something.
he's alive now in the present from which I don't
Look,
know.
man, we're
I
talking about the eternal
Don't worry about it.
return here, all right? There's circles, time is a flat circle, all
no, I
right?
don't understand that either. I think
Time
no,
is a flat circle riding on a turtle. Okay,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
Everybody knows this.
You're
why is it a
overthinking this stuff, man. All right. That's what we're trying to talk here. We don't want to overthink
Cool
this
Robot
stuff.
Man wants to kill future past man.
No,
Okay, just
no,
don't worry
look,
about it.
I'm actually with you, Caleb. I'm not a huge fan of time travel stuff. It's done well sometimes, like, like in the last episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I think
Oh
that was
yeah,
a well done time travel plot.
yeah,
But
man. Triple time travel, and they all got to work together.
yeah,
Fantastic. Well
but
done.
ultimately it's stupid. I don't mind like time tricks. I think there was that episode of Star Trek that's really popular where Worf gets stuck in that anomaly and he has to redo the same fucking day over and over.
oh yeah. What or
Yeah,
like it's like Groundhog's Day, right?
Yeah, like a Groundhog's Day thing, and
Yeah.
he ends up
Groundhog Day's
figuring out how to
amazing.
send a message using like Riker's like rank insignia and like the car. I mean, there's some cool things you can do with time travel, but for the most part, it stretches the limits of my patience for the most part. Um, but yeah, man, what the hell were we talking about? Oh, the best Arnold
I
movie.
totally derailed it. I love it.
The best Arnold movie, by the way,
We're on to
is
something.
Total Recall. All right,
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's hard to argue with.
and
That is a good.
that's the best Philip K. Dick adaptation. I think that Total Recall is actually a better movie than Blade Runner as a Philip K. Dick adaptation.
Yeah, no, it's way
Ah,
better.
okay, okay, sure, yeah.
I don't think Blade Runner is that great.
No, it's kind of boring, and I like boring things, which is rough, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I never cared that much for Blade Runner. Total Recall is way better. Yeah, for sure. Although, but
Really?
sci-fi in general, Philip K. Dick is one of the better ones for me. I just don't. Sometimes you have to make hard choices in life. Maybe I'm missing out on this whole realm of wonderful, enlightening experiences reading sci-fi, but I don't think I have the time to go too far with it.
Right. I mean, I feel these, and a lot of new sci-fi is very meh. It's not really worth it. Um, but what I like about Total Recall, and I'm going to tie this into what we were talking about, movies over explaining stuff, is that
Perfect.
you actually have a very dense storyline in that movie, a very complex storyline. I mean, everybody talks about like the pill thing coming from the Matrix, but Total Recall did the pill thing like a decade earlier,
That's
where
right.
it
Yeah.
gave him the reality pill. And Total Recall is a movie with a huge amount of backstory that is so well done that there's really no exposition for it. Like you don't, if you put that movie on and you start watching it at at the very beginning, in the first 5 minutes of the movie, just by the stuff in the background of his apartment, you learn like the background story because he turns on the news, there's Mars riots going on, he turns it off, he wants to go to Mars, but everything's like there in that first scene, and that's all you need. They don't go into the deep motivations of the corporations on Mars, they don't go into the back history of the aliens or anything like that. It's just a fucking scene, it's set, and a story about like being a hero and love and identity happens in those 2 hours, and it's perfect and tight, and there's not a moment wasted in that movie, I don't think, and that's why I like it so much. And like I said, we suffer from a a extreme over explanation like syndrome. You look at books like the Game of
Yeah.
Thrones stuff, and you're like, listen, man, and every fantasy writer, indie fantasy writer or fantasy writer is like, oh, I'm going to write fucking 7,000 billion pages of this shit, right? I'm like, because you're telling me that you have more to say than Dostoevsky had to say in his entire life? I fucking doubt it, dude. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
well, there is it serves
Savage.
a desperate savage hunger for information to fill every little gap in experience, every little gap in time, right? It definitely has become compulsive to demand more backstory, more elaboration, side characters,
Why
spin-off.
is this?
Right.
Why is this?
Why?
Well,
Why?
there are a few we can we can approach it a few different ways. One, I
Yeah.
think, is that more materially or economically, it's simply easier to pump out and receive material.
Hmm.
There is the communicative channels, the technology for producing and consuming stories, narratives, spin-offs, that it's much these things are much more accessible, they're very fast. So we have the means to say way more about every little thing, just materially, physically. But
Yeah.
then also spiritually, and it's related to the material plane as well, spiritually or culturally, I think that there is also an increasing inability to abide silence, space, ambiguity, your own organic projected imagination into a created fantasy world. There's an inability to endure the uncertainty of space left open, things undecided, unresolved.
Right.
Hmm.
It's like
Is it
we're
because
we're
we're
afraid of
afraid to make it up
silence.
ourselves?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think
We're
we're
afraid of
afraid of
looking inward.
silence, afraid of
Yeah. Okay.
emptiness, you know?
Well, and having to, right, fill it in ourselves too, and or just live with the real spaces in experience as well. It's not
Ooh.
just, oh, that they didn't tell the whole story. The whole story cannot be told, but rather than manically flinging all these different facts, it's like a hysterical strategy to distract yourself from the fact that the complete story does not exist, that there
Right.
are always going to be missing pieces.
Is it also maybe because the culture has shattered to the extent that when you write something, I cannot trust myself to fill in the gaps because you
That's a
and I
good
do
point.
not share a culture anymore.
That's
So
also, yeah,
it's like flipping it around and going, I
right.
don't know I don't trust what I think, and I also can't trust what you think. So you need to explain it to me down to the very letter. Otherwise,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think that then touches on that, yeah, much larger problem of that breakdown in shared assumptions or harmonious ways of life where
I wonder I wonder if this is why your essay rang true to me so much because what you're from the Midwest, Indianapolis, or did you grow up somewhere else?
I grew up in southern Indiana, but I've lived in
Oh,
Indianapolis for a while now. Yeah.
yeah, I'm from Cleveland. I lived I lived half my life in Ohio.
Mhm.
So I mean, and I've been to Indianapolis many times. Like I know that place pretty well.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, there's probably something going on there. We
Yes.
have a shared background, a shared history.
Sure, but yeah, I do think that there's been this
Yeah,
much longer term fragmentation, and really the current emphasis that we see now on communication and being transparent and visible and vulnerable and clear. I think that actually is mostly a response to that collapse of automatic or intuitive understanding that comes from actual rooted organic ways of life that are held in common over time.
yeah.
Right.
I'm picturing two people meeting in the woods and not being able to trust each other, not speaking the same language, and how it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
You have to be super clear. You have to be very dumbed down about what you're trying to do.
right. And we say this while we've got our right hand on our swords with
Yeah,
the hot
right.
button
Just
ready.
making sure.
Like,
Yeah. But
yeah,
it has been turned into a virtue. It's claimed as a way forward, right? It's that, oh, the real problem in the past was all of these obscurities and misunderstandings. But if we just become more and more explicit, you think that becoming more explicit and communicative and detailed about with your communication, that's progress. But it's really a sign of weakening bonds.
yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. You know,
Mm.
I took my daughter to see the new Beetlejuice movie the other week, and I mean, for a contemporary movie, it was a decent night out. Basically, I'm not going to bemoan it, but it suffered from exactly what we're talking about right now. It suffered from overwriting, you know,
Yeah.
and like over explanation and way too many characters, way too many side plots that went nowhere. And it seems to be like a trend in movies right now because I saw a few other like big summer blockbuster type movies. I saw like the new latest Ghostbusters, which also suffered from the same exact thing. Because deep down, both those movies, there was a good movie in there. There was a good movie in there, but they're just not allowed to breathe. They're not allowed to be quiet and silent and actually focus on the interpersonal relationships at all. It's constantly throwing all these side plots and like member berries and that type of thing. And it's like, just calm down, like let it be. Let your work breathe and speak for itself. Are you guys familiar? I'm sure you are, Caleb, with Roberto Bolaño.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I'm afraid not.
So Roberto
I am
Bolaño
the Philistine.
is a Mexican. Well, he's actually a Chilean writer, but he spent most of his life in Mexico and then later life in Spain before he passed away.
Oh, I
And
have heard of this guy.
he is probably one of my favorite, more recent writers. And he wrote two big books that are like must reads in my opinion: The Savage Detectives and 2666. And one of the things about his style, and in The Savage Detectives, kind of, I'm going to give you guys a quick summary because to kind of explain it, The Savage Detectives is kind of autofiction in a way because it's clearly about him, but not really. It's about him and his friends and real life things. And it's about this kind of Mexican kid, well, Chilean kid living in Mexico who is a poet, and he drops out of school to hang out with these guys called the infrarealists. And they're just a bunch of kind of like punk rock poets, socialists, Marxists living in Mexico. And the first few chapters of the book are diary entries about him like meeting these girls, these art hoes, basically, your teenage poet type stuff. But then the rest of the book, each chapter, and they're all pretty short, is written in the format of interviews. And it's interviews about those characters from the beginning, from the diaries, right? And it's all these people like, 30 years, 20 years later, like, we're talking about this guy and he did this and he went out. I remember when he came to my house and he did this. And you have a novel that is completely fragmented because the interviews hop through time. It's like they'll have a date and they'll be like, 1988 or 1996, Mexico City, 1999, Madrid, Spain or whatever, right? And the story is told in the gaps. All right. It's told, you kind of put together the plot or the actual, the line that goes through the novel, not so much in the actual text and in the actual narrative of these interviews, but in the gaps of in between, because you as a reader kind of know what's going on. You're able to take the whole of this fractured narrative from all these different interviews and you combine the life of these characters. And it's such a insanely fantastic way to write. And it's about like what's left out that matters, or like, where was he for 5 years? And it's one of my favorite novels because of that, because it doesn't hold your hand. It makes you figure things out on your own. And I love that. And I wish we had more of that in our world right now.
It is
making you evoke. Sorry, please, sir.
It's a nice construction because it is a little bit of a voluble, almost gossipy, tawdry account of these relationships and maneuverings and the little conflicts and all of these different poetry groups and scenes. But then, right, there is more story behind it. It does cover a much greater range of material, but you do have to fill it in yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like it inspires or requires intuition on the part of the reader, and that's where the magic comes from.
Oh, absolutely. Because you'll have a chapter where it's some girl and she's like, oh God, Roberto, he's a loser. It's got a small dick, can't get it up. All he wanted to do was bone me or whatever, and he never came around anymore. But then 300 pages later, you'll come up with another entry from somebody else that talks about the same time, and he's like, oh, he was in love with this one girl and he would always go to her house, but he had this other girlfriend he ignored, and that's the other girlfriend that was talking in the previous chapter. So it kind of like fills in the gaps unwittingly, obviously wittingly because the author put it all together, but it's right there. And it's such a great novel that I recommend to everybody. 2666, which is like his masterpiece though, is a very difficult book, and it's difficult in a emotional way because it is about all the murders in Sinaloa, and it's just a brutal book about women getting murdered and police reports of women getting decapitated and raped, and it's just
Quite graphic from what I hear. I have not read it,
yeah,
but
it was a book that I mean it is a masterpiece, but man, like I would read it and I was just like, oh fuck, dude, like you can't just you can't power through it because it's so like
mhm,
so dark and so
drags your soul down.
yeah, it's just this like terrible like brutality and like complete like disregard for human life that these monsters of human monsters are committing these crimes, and it's based on pretty much real stories
Yeah.
of the killings in Mexico. And it's just and how like nobody does anything about them and everybody's kind of covering them up, and
Right.
it leaves you just dark, but it's truthful. That's the thing, right? There's
Mm.
truth there. There's truth in how the humans react.
Yeah.
It's the truth of how our world is, and our world is not explained. Our world is chaotic,
Right.
and and that's kind of why I don't like this Mickey Mouse over explanation, putting everything in a
Yeah. Just hold
category.
your hands. We'll direct you to the therapy that's right for you, that'll make you feel good about what you're doing.
Right.
You
It's
know,
go ahead, man.
sorry, it's just making me think to back to the last podcast how we're talking about historical illiteracy. And in fiction, you have over explanation. And in history, you have oversimplification.
Yeah, totally.
You know,
Absolutely.
Putin bad,
Yeah.
democracy good. That's
Yeah.
history. Good job, guys.
Right.
What the
World War II, United States was good, Germany was bad.
Yeah,
so
Captain
so so in
America,
fiction,
good. Red Skull, bad.
Mhm.
so I'm trying to think what I'm thinking here. It's interesting. Fantasy and imagination is being drowned out with words, and then critical thinking is being starved to death.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
two sides of the same coin, isn't it?
It totally is. Yeah, I think that's apt way to characterize it. It's yeah, in when you want to escape from the world, you need more and more detail to really hammer home that alternative or distraction. But when it comes to confronting what has actually happened and what is going on, then let's smooth it over as much as possible. Let's make it as absolutely clear and stark as we can.
Right.
It's
And,
like it's like what happened in fiction. It's clouding myth, and in history, it's obscuring truth,
Yeah, well, that's a very good way of putting it.
or
yeah,
maybe both
absolutely.
ways, myth and truth.
I
Mhm.
think
I
that
don't know.
we should I'm going to make a podcast rule, okay? A podcast rule of writing. All right. What I think you should do if you're a writer right now, if you're writing a novel right now, is you should go to your shelf and pick up Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. If you don't own The Brothers Karamazov and you've never read it, you're absolutely fucking wrong, because The Brothers Karamazov is the book that's all you need to read. If you read one novel your entire life, it's The Brothers Karamazov that you should read. It teaches you everything you need to know about life, death, God, everything. Right? Women, the law, crime, everything, right?
All
And
of
you
it. All of it.
look at that novel and see how many words it's got, see how many pages it's got. The rule is your book cannot be longer than the Brothers Karamazov, because there's nothing you can fucking say that has more value than what Dostoevsky put down in that novel. That's my rule. I
Yeah,
I
won't
think
read
that's
your
a good
book.
rule. I think that's a good rule.
yeah, we gotta cap it at some point, right? That's
Yeah.
there has to
Right.
be a limit to that for
Like,
sure.
you're telling me George R. R. Martin's got more to say than Tolstoy did in War and Peace?
Well, it's but the way these narratives work, it's not even about what you have to say so much.
Right. It's the world building and all that stuff.
Yeah,
It's the
and
escapism of it.
right. The continuation of a saga with these themes that people want to see hit over and over again.
Yeah, I'm just picking on fantasy right now because I've got a hate on for fantasy for some reason.
Ah,
Uh,
that's all
That's
right.
fair.
It doesn't do a whole lot.
no.
Do a whole lot. I mean,
But to change the topic, well, actually, I wanted to say one more thing about the internet really. I was listening to Red Scare, I think yesterday, and the latest episode, Anna, I think Anna or Dasha, I forgot which one said it, said something good about the internet. She said that when you're on the internet, everybody you encounter, you either pity or are jealous of them. That's kind of the two modes that like people default to. And I thought that was really smart because that's true. You're either like, if you're in the perpetually online world, you've got this pity towards everybody else because they don't understand what you're talking about, or you're jealous because they have much more, clout or reach
Yeah.
or, influence than you do. So that's kind of how a lot of people approach the internet, which leads for a completely toxic community. And community is such an obnoxious fucking word that I hate. But yeah, I thought that was a good thing. But to take it away to a different topic. So, Caleb, because this podcast is about you actually, not about us, and we're just ranting on. How did you end up? Tell me about the your this show you're putting on the 25th, the Sovereign House. How did that
Yeah.
come about?
Well, it's the sort of thing that I am almost entirely disinclined to even do. But I had been thinking about putting on some kind of show or doing a release of sorts, and I have very mixed feelings about readings and public events in general. I think they might have some use or value, but it's very questionable. But my publishers thought they encouraged me softly also to do something. They weren't all that demanding about it, but they said it'd be cool if I would do something. And I know a few people who live in New York, and mostly this came about through Manny Marrero, who is a guy who runs an indie press called Expat.
Okay, I'm
And
familiar with them. Yeah.
yeah, they are genuinely very eclectic. Maybe a little bit more on the, I'm not sure, it's hard to say. They do a lot of stuff that's incantatory, almost like modern mystic, very fringy, but not in a way that's totally alienating or incomprehensible. But they're cool in general. And Manny is a very decent guy and very supportive. And I met him, I think, through, I've only published material on one or two online magazines. I mostly don't bother with it, but Expat was one. And then I went to New York a couple of years ago to be in a reading that he was hosting. So I know him through that. And I mostly, it's not so much even that I wanted to be in New York, but I really didn't want to do a reading in Indianapolis because I don't really care for this city. And I also want to make it clear I'm not sucking up to New York. I also really don't give that much of a fuck what anyone in New York thinks about me either. But I don't want to do another reading in Indianapolis. The last one I did not go very well. And I don't know if I've talked to you about this or how public I've been talking about it, but when Novelty came out last year, the short story collection, I tried to do a reading. I did a reading at a place where I work, and because it's a coffee shop, but also a venue. It's in a
Right.
exposed brick, that kind of spot. They have musical performances, DJs, but I did a reading, and someone, I don't know, a series of anonymous avatars had the they claimed that I had invited on people who were white supremacists or bigots. There was this attempted cancellation. There were public posts about how the place where I worked and that was hosting the reading was hosting white supremacists, people who were associated with fascist fringe right movements. And of course, this freaked out the owner. I wanted to cancel the whole thing, but they said you can still do it as long as you don't let the specific people that have been called out or have been targeted, as long as you don't let them read. We went ahead with the reading and I let those people read anyway. And
Yeah.
it, it didn't do any, it had no real effect on anything practical, but it was extremely obnoxious to me.
You're right. I can imagine. I can only imagine like the level of just kind of unneeded stress. And I mean that's
Yes.
why these people do that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
they're just
Well,
flexing. They're pitiful
yeah.
bugs. You know.
Well, and if it were up to me, I mean, anybody who I would just tell people like that to fuck off any day. I mean, I wouldn't even think twice about it. But if it's not my business and it's someone else who is letting me do something in their space and their name is attached to it, so really I'm at the mercy of their sensitivity.
Right.
Right.
And
And that's who they're
and
really going after. It's
yeah,
got
and
nothing.
99.9% of the time, a business owner is going to flinch real hard in the face of something like that.
Right.
And I try to eliminate the potential for controversy or something that will cut into their business. We have totally different interests here. And I can recognize that. And I was never mad. I did not hold a grudge. I had no problem with the business owner reacting the way that he did. It's not even about that. It's just something I would rather not have to worry about and mess with. And I would rather just not do anything than even bring on that sort of risk. And
Right.
there are too many, and the material I'm putting out now, a lot of the stuff, it is actually, I try to still be somewhat quiet about it, but actually, much of it is fairly offensive to the more dominant tastes. And especially, Indianapolis is the kind of place where we're a little bit behind and a little bit too earnest about things. And so there's a lot of very there's a lot of aggressive shit livery and people, and especially in what calls itself a writing community, it's not going to be accommodating to what I'm doing at all, and I don't want attention from it, and I need to go someplace where I have a little bit more cushion and a with more population density, where a more mixed crowd can be filtered out and be more receptive to what I'm doing.
Right. We live in such a sad time that, 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, I remember, well, not that long, but, when I was a teenager, I remember, we used to do like punk shows and stuff in Southern California. And the big concern was like, oh, you don't want to piss off the local cops and the local church ladies and stuff and piss off the conservatives with with your cuss words or your loud music and that kind of stuff. And now it's the other way around.
Yeah.
The church ladies are basically young shit libs,
Yeah, the blue hairs. Yeah.
and it's such a stifling thing because you get people, and I think maybe you're very similar to me. I think, and I know I'm with this though, is that we don't really belong in any of these. I don't consider myself a right winger conservative, and I don't consider myself a left winger Marxist or anything like that. And I'm a little bit of everything. And I think that like I just like to be an individual, and I want to hear your shit lib takes, and I want to hear your far left takes, and I want to hear your far right takes. I want to hear all the stuff.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm going to be interested in it, but I mean I want you to be on the stage there, and I want to be able to sit down and make my own decision if I hate you or not.
Yeah.
And it's so rough because it's like, you're right. It's a level of fatigue, right? It's a
Yeah.
level where like you end up self-censoring what you say, not because you're a coward or because you're, afraid of the blowback. Because I think most of the blowback has kind of gone away now from this era, but you're just like, God, I don't want to fucking deal with it.
Yeah.
I don't care about like, who's going to be the president. I always joke around that my goal this election is to not even know who won for like 6 months. I don't want to hear about this shit anymore. I just like, I don't want to be put into a box where like I believe these things or you believe these things, and then that's the rules you have to follow. And it's so tiresome as a writer, as an artist, as somebody that wants to live. I just want to experience things. Stop fucking taking things away from me. Let me make my own decision. Let me smoke my cigarettes and, drink my coffee or whatever. And it's to me, it's just so gross that we even have to worry about that stuff, because you're right. It's not about me. It's about the normal people around me that like, what this guy's business might suffer because some crazy fucking loser, doesn't like so and so and thinks everybody's Hitler or something like that, which is
And
so insane and so gross.
yeah, it's very unfortunate, but I suppose there you could you could react in many different ways to that. You could try to meet it head on. Some people do that. That's not what I care to do. I would rather avoid it, to the extent that it's possible. And I think that, yeah, you can adapt your communication and your art, and you can become more artful in how you put out what you're doing, and you can tailor it to more specific audiences, and everything can work out just fine that way.
All right.
One of my deep secret dark egoist desires is to have somebody like that, call me out on Substack or whatever, and then they find out that I'm a high school social studies teacher, and I just
Yeah.
be like, yeah, what are you gonna do about it? Fucking nothing. That's what. That's why I don't say a lot online because I'm too busy working.
Yeah.
Well, we know we
Uh,
live in a time where, a good 25% of the population online in circles are, these woke scold cat ladies. And then the
being
other
very generous with that 25%. That seems low to me.
and the other percentage is wannabe Savonarolas, who
Yeah.
are trad cathing or whatever,
Yeah.
telling you that you're going to go to hell because you looked at a picture or whatever. And then you
You
got
looked
like
at
that.
butts once.
Yeah, you got that
You
you get
sinner.
that 5% that's like you got to post your DNA results to prove how not
How
Jewish you
white you
are or
are.
Yeah.
something like that. And
Guy coming at me about that today. I was
yeah,
like,
you're like,
dude.
Show me your test results. Show me your
Yeah.
genes.
He's like, "Are you even white?" I'm like, "Bro, I only block for being stupid or boring. Congratulations on achieving
right.
both.
And you're just
Well
like,
done."
can you just fucking be normal for a fucking minute,
Yeah,
guys?
just
Like I'm just
bro.
like, oh God, can you just not be crazy? Like, I'm just I'm just
I
trying to
can't.
vibe here, dude. Like,
Hey man, at least it's an ethos, all right?
right.
Like relax.
Right. I just want to drink a cup of coffee, listen to some
What ties the room
literature.
together? Yeah, we just want to abide.
And you gotta be crazy all the fucking time, dude, Like, you're like, God damn, dude, like, calm the fuck down. And it's so stressful because, I mean, like, the whole Jewish thing has been like the constant thing for the last week. And I'm like, oh, I'm already fucking
Oh,
tired of
certainly.
it,
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, I'm Jewish, guys. I'm 100% Jewish. Like,
The monocle flies off. Yeah. What
yeah,
spits out?
I'm wearing a yarmulke right now, and
Really?
my curls are growing as we
I'm
speak.
actually I'm actually up in the Jewish space laser right
Yeah,
now. That's where I broadcast from.
yeah. It's just
Shut
like
it down.
like
Shut it.
I hate this shit, And it's just like, can we just be normal, Like I
That's so
don't,
hard.
like I miss the days of normal, abnormal normality, basically,
You
when
got the
like, yeah, it was like, dude, just abide a bit.
you got the JQ, but what about almost maybe even more pressing? I would argue, what about the WQ, the woman question?
We don't have women on this show
Well, no, of course not.
except for
But
Lisa.
I was gonna say,
Shout out to
have
Lisa,
I
and I think
have I just learned something about Lisa?
we're gonna get Sudana on next week. I think.
Oh, bro. Yes.
Um,
Throwing haymakers. I can't wait to just watch you two go at it over LA and New York, and then I'm just gonna be over here going, Florida man reigns,
dude,
baby.
I'm from LA, but I think Los Angeles sucks. But I still love it. But it still sucks.
I'm from Cleveland. It's a fucking shithole, but I mean, it's home, man. It's my hometown, baby.
Yeah,
Fuck
but
it.
Los Angeles is actually built on a slumbering demon.
That's true.
All right.
That's true.
If you look at Los Angeles, it's in a valley. It's in a bowl, right? The Los Angeles
Yeah.
Valley, and it's really the resting place of a giant egregore demon, right?
Yeah.
but
And
guys, I'm I'm telling you here, at some point we are going to have to confront the WQ, because what's going to happen, even on a place like Substack, is that the people that we were just talking about who want to be normal, who can't be normal, and who talk about the Jews, they're going to increasingly target women, and women are going to demand more and more censorship.
Oh, that's happening.
that
Yeah,
happened today. That
Yeah,
happened
yeah,
that's what
yeah.
today.
I'm
There was that
saying, is
one
that
post.
look for more of that. Be prepared, because it's
Oh,
going
it
to
flares up.
escalate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like Substack herpes. Every
Yeah,
so often somebody will flare up about, oh, it's
right.
horrible that they can say these things to us. And
Yeah, I just am so entertained. I'm sorry, I'm just I'm so entertained by the female reaction, the way they take offense to things and the way they think they can just shut down. Oh my God, I can't be hearing things like this. Why aren't they banned? Free speech in quotation marks. It's like you're so cute and frustrating with that. I don't know. I'm
yeah.
sorry. I know it's
No,
But I
it's
mean,
absolutely. But that's your women flex, right?
I know. Yeah, it is. It
Ultimately,
totally is.
it's the lame
Yeah.
version of the pick a fight in a bar so your
Yeah.
boyfriend fights another
Right.
dude.
Or it's like, look at all these losers who are paying attention to me. I don't even like them, but look at them.
Yeah. That's what
yeah,
it is. When
Yeah.
you have crazy, JQ Nazi dudes, you're always going to have like women that are there to trigger them on purpose.
Yes.
That's what they're
Right.
for. Like
yeah.
they
Yeah.
live for that
Nature is
kind of
healing.
stuff.
Nature is healing.
You
Yeah.
know,
Right.
their whole like essence, their whole marketing thing is to basically live off
Yeah.
of that. They're both parasitical to each
Yeah.
other in a way because that's how they get
100.
views, that's how they get clicks, and I just want to ban all of them. I just block all of them.
Well, it's they can all. I don't want anyone to be banned necessarily. You should
Right.
be able to ignore what doesn't interest you.
Right.
Yeah,
Like I've
you
blocked so
can.
many people on Substack because I'm just like,
Yeah, man.
okay, that's just crazy, bro. I don't need to listen to
Yeah.
your craziness, Like I don't need your
That's
insanity in
enough.
my
That should
life.
be enough. That really
Yeah,
should be.
I think Substack is doing a fantastic job of just saying, here, if you don't like something, ban
Yeah.
it. I mean, block
Right.
it,
well,
Yeah.
I
Right.
think one of them was complaining about direct messages, and it's like you can custom set direct messages in all kinds of different ways. Straight
Yeah.
up, just turn them off,
Oh my gosh, I'm just
or set
drowning
it
in
to
all these hateful
yeah, or set it
right?
to
messages.
subscribers only.
Do
Yeah.
you remember that
Even
guy that
hate
wanted to
them.
fight me in Savannah or whatever?
Oh, that was fantastic. That was a great.
He made
That was
like
a great
seven
day.
accounts to like threaten to fight us or something
Yeah,
like that.
Johnny Exium.
Yeah, I don't even know what it was about. I don't remember what we were arguing about.
I
I
don't
just,
even think he knows.
yeah, I was just
Yeah,
like, okay, dude, I'm just gonna block you because I don't have time for your crazy shit. And it was that easy. Just fucking block them.
yeah.
I block
Click it,
everybody.
gone.
I block everybody that looks like a boomer automatically. I'm just like, all right, this guy, he's got that like boomer photograph, and he's gonna have some takes, some
He's got a
like,
cigar in his mouth and he's staring at the camera
yeah,
on
just
his
block,
phone and
done.
on his back porch.
Yeah, we're done. I don't want to hear anything about, your opinion on anything. I mean, I kid. I'm sure there's some great boomers that listen to this podcast, and I love you very much for
But
destroying
you go
everything.
on, it's instinct though. You have a sense that
Yeah, I'm,
You
I'm,
know
I'm
it when you
prejudiced
see it.
against the
You know it
boomer.
when you see it.
that's
Right?
fine.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I
boomers are
mean,
like porn. You know it when
you're
you see it.
you're you're so right that like we do lack there's a cultural fear that these people kind of instill in us, and it's great that there are places that you can go and read your work, and like I said, I don't think your work is in any way, shape, or form controversial by any standards, and it'd fit in right in with the from different era, but from today's perspective. But I think that these people are so hell bent on their worldview that there's no
Yeah.
alternative mindset, and you see that in
Communicator.
yeah, you see that in politics today, and you see it in the stupidity of the way we talk about politics. And I was kind of upset about the debate. Well, I mean, it was dumb, but the whole cats and dogs Ohio thing, right? And I think that way too many people focused on that and made a thing about that and blah 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 and cats and dogs and voodoo and all this shit, and it turned it into like an explanation where like you got to explain why the Haitians are there and what the Haitians are doing. And I think that that's missing the point, right? I think that what's missing the point is it doesn't fucking matter whether the Haitians are eating cats or dogs or if they're all criminals.
Yeah.
If all the Haitians were white Ukrainian hot girl doctors, I still wouldn't want them there because
Yeah.
20,000 people, no matter where you put them, completely changes the environment. It will completely change the cultural landscape of a place, right? So
Yeah.
whether it's Haitians eating cats and doing voodoo or, beautiful Ukrainian refugee women, I still don't want any town to be inundated with 20,000 foreigners. And I say that,
Infrastructure doesn't care.
right,
Yeah.
Infrastructure doesn't care what they look like.
Well,
I mean, this
plus,
is how you get shanty towns.
right.
yeah. And it's also a real estate scam and a business
Yeah.
chicanery as well, which is another
Yep.
thing that gets overlooked is that, oh, you've got these owners of large scale businesses and owners of apartment buildings and real estate who get vouchers from the government. They're subsidized by the government to take these people in. They can pay them next to nothing. They can reap huge profits. But no, let's talk about how the the working class population, oh, they're actually just drug addicts and losers, so they deserve it. We need hardworking Haitians here. It's just totally insane.
Right, it's disgusting. And you know, it's not about the cats and the dogs, because I will go to Ohio and eat all your cats and dogs, okay? I don't give a shit. I'll
Delicious.
eat your turtles,
Delicious.
bro, you know? It's really about, you know, you have,
ABCMR.
and it's kind of ironic because I said I grew up in a very left liberal environment, and I would consider myself quite the leftist back in the day. And one of the big kind of things was local community culture, you know,
Yeah,
and
right.
you know, leftists and lefty artist types always pride themselves in like the community of the area, you know. So like where I lived in Southern California, we had this place called Fourth Street, which was like the hipster street with all the bars and the skaters and like the punk rock stuff going on. And you know, every like neighborhood you have, like, you know, in San Diego, which is a great city, you have Hillcrest, which is like the kind of the gay neighborhood. Then you have University Heights, which is like the middle class hipster neighborhood, and North Park, which is like the young hipster neighborhood. And they all have like vibes in a community. You have Little Italy that has like that kind of vibe, and then you have like the Mexican neighborhoods. And these people would be really pissed off if 20,000 people from another place, whether it's from another country or even, you know, the Midwest, came into that neighborhood and settled in, you know, permanently changing the culture and the feel of that neighborhood, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
I live in a place, and I'm a double immigrant, right? I say I'm a double immigrant because I immigrated from Europe to Southern California as a little kid, but I still did. But then as a cultural Californian, I, you know, internally migrated to the South recently in the last three, not even, it'll be 3 years next month. And no, I take it back. It'll be 2 years next month, I think. And I this place has a culture, a vibe, a style of its own that's very different than California. And right now, where I live, it's actually being, some people call it invaded by Northerners, invaded by people from specifically from Ohio, actually. Everywhere you go, you got fucking Ohio license plates, you know? And these Southerners that lived in this town for the last 200 years, 300 years, I mean, there's people with last names. If you go to these cemeteries that have, you know, gravestones in Savannah for, you know, fucking 200 years ago, you know, there's people still that, you know, that go to these cemeteries because they
Yeah.
know, you know, they're part of these families. Now you have all these Ohioans and, you know, New Yorkers coming in here, and it does change the culture, right?
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine living in a small town with 20,000 people or 40,000 people or whatever, or how many, I don't know what the population of Springfield is, right? And then having 20,000 people being dropped. And I think that's the issue that people ignore. It has nothing to do with who is being dropped. It's the fact that, like, that's theirs. You know what I mean? In the same way, like, we claim our place, and it does change the culture. And it's very ironic that this gets blown over by the same people that have a problem with gentrification.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, they're just it's not thinking it through. It's not understanding anything like this, and it's not knowing how things work. You know, you drop 20,000 people in a place, and I said infrastructure doesn't care. It doesn't care. That stuff doesn't just
Right.
snap, boom, up overnight. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think about like in my county, we've got 50,000 people in my county, period. You know what I mean? My town is right around a little over 5,000 people live here. And there are a lot of people moving here from the more expensive areas of Florida because obviously, right? But you know, there's a lot of housing getting built, there's infrastructure getting built, we're getting a new high school. Like this is stuff that 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now is still going to be going on. But
Right.
you know, thankfully, it seems like there's some people with at least some foresight going, "Oh boy, we better build some stuff." You know what I mean? We better get trucking. But yeah, it's just it's disruptive, and that's not even like a value judgment. That's just a
Yeah.
It's right.
observation.
It's a
It
fact.
is disruptive. Yeah, and that's just what it is.
Well,
To pretend otherwise is ignorance.
the-
It's immature. It's not the kind of thing
Not
people, not the kind
serious.
of things, yeah, not serious.
Not
Exactly.
serious. And but the
Very good.
left, speaking of
Yes.
not being serious, the left really hasn't had a strong anti-globalist thrust or wing to it for a while now, but they used to be
Oh yeah.
defined almost by that, by their opposition to globalism. But now it's almost as if this cultural fog has clouded everything, and they think that they have to support all of these different people from everywhere in the name of this communistic or egalitarian program that
The
they
democracy.
right that they're blind to how these mass scale or global planetary economic systems are actually working against them, or they're supporting something that is strip mining the earth and destroying different ways of life.
Right. I just don't take them as serious people. I think that the last real manifestation of what you consider the left was during the Occupy Wall Street thing,
Yeah,
and I
I feel
Yeah.
like
think
Yeah.
and I think they got completely subverted and destroyed during that era. And what you have now is really just a populist husk of a feel good self aggrandizement, you know. And I don't,
yeah,
it just it's not real. They're not serious people. The right's not serious either, you know. And one of the things that bothers me in a way, and I shoot in every direction because that's how I roll. You know, you get people going, oh, well, looking, there's a bunch of Marxists and communists. I'm like, okay, listen, dude. Okay, first of all, the core issue of dropping 20,000 people is not really a Marxist issue. These are not Marxist ideologies. They're globalist capitalist ideologies. All right. At the core of that stuff, it's not about they might paint the idea with this social Marxism nonsense to make people feel good about themselves. But what it really comes down to is people are making money off these fucking people.
yeah, right. Well,
It's about money.
the Marxism is now it's used by capitalism to accustom people to lower living standards and, and to equating themselves with all of these other squalid conditions.
Right. And it's, and then we are in a, precarious spot. And it goes back to your book, which does have a working man's kind of feel to it, where we're stuck working, we're stuck working in these, sometimes us middle class people, are kind of forgotten because we're stuck in this world where we're told that we have all this privilege, but we're working in these, complete non promotable jobs where we've got nowhere to go and we're just struggling, and every generation it's getting harder and harder. Yet we're being told that, oh, you guys you're a failure. And we're being told that by elites on both sides. You've got, jackass leftists telling you that you're a fascist for wanting a clean street, and then you've got people like that jackass who did that documentary movie thing. I think I saw him post on X today that like you should never be taking a sick day, and fuck you.
Right, yeah,
I
right.
forgot who what's his name.
You're not Walsh. If you're not grinding yourself to the bone, then you don't deserve to eat gruel.
Yeah. Like you're a fucking podcaster, dude. All right.
Yeah,
Like you make
no one
money.
podcasts harder than I do. I talk for hours a day.
Yeah. So yeah, I fucking hate them all, man. Like, and it's one of these things where like we are stuck in a situation where we're grinded by these dumb boomer headed retards on one side, and then who got theirs. So they just took theirs, and then these children LARPing as communist revolutionaries, but they're really just trust fund kids on the other side, or they're literal demented mutants, right? And it's like, fuck, dude, like,
I always, and maybe this is some kind of mystification. This isn't necessarily practical, but my conclusion or my view on all of this really is that despite all of the frustration in the political sphere, all the exploitation, the injustice, uh, I think we are here to suffer and we're here to be punished and we're getting it pretty good.
right.
And You could get it a whole lot worse also, and we would deserve that too. And if you really want to be happy, of course, do your best. Try to be a good person. There is still, I'm not trying to deny a standard there. I'm not trying to obscure that. Try to live up to a standard of decency, but you will fail. You will be punished. You will have to work. You are going to suffer. Your best bet for happiness is hope in something else that is not like anything that you can possibly imagine on this earth.
Right. Well said.
Yeah.
And it's you in a way, a lot of the kind of Gen X kind of I hate bringing this up, right? A lot of the Gen X kind of mentality of a kind of extra liberalism, the activism liberalism, the Anthony Bourdain kind of era liberalism of we're going to fix the world. I'm an actor that's going to go to whatever country and I'm going to rally up, knowledge about stuff and we're going to do all this stuff. In a way, that is a kind of a Luciferian kind of concept of I'm going to fix the world. I'm going to do it. And it's never going to work because the world has always been fucked, right? It's broken.
It's not something to fix.
Right. You
There's nothing
cannot
to
fix it. You can only focus on yourself.
Yeah, right.
And you're right, Caleb. I mean, we are meant to suffer. The world is suffering.
Just look
And
at it for a second. Yeah. Like, don't blink. And what do you really see?
right. And
Hey,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Oh, just I have a thought about saving the world and fixing it. I was thinking about a conversation I had in class today, and I was also thinking about an opportunity that's popped up, and I would actually like both of your advice, especially Caleb, because I don't talk to him regularly, obviously. Um, and also, I do need to be heading out in a few minutes. Wife wants walk, so wife gets walk.
Yeah, we got to wrap it up here.
Oh yeah, we've been talking for two hours.
Yeah. But what I would like you guys to answer for me. So I have an opportunity to possibly start a creative writing club at my school. Word has gotten out that I enjoy writing in my free time. So I had a couple of students come ask me about it. And what I don't know when I'm going to be able to start this because my plate is already freaking stupid full. But I'd like to do it. And I've spoken to the students and they kind of understand what's up. But like rural town, creative writing workshop, creative writing club. Obviously, there'll be the Karamazov brothers rule, but what else would you guys recommend? Like, if you have a chance to plant a seed in a town somewhere, how are you going to approach it? What do you guys think?
Do you want to go, Alexander?
You go first. You're the guest.
All right. Well, uh, if you want, I guess maybe two things come to mind. One, if you want to play it on the safer side and the less personal side, I would start, and I don't know exactly then everything that you draw out of this, but I would start by looking at John Gardner's The Art of Fiction. I don't know
Okay.
if you're familiar with that. I would
No.
look that up and I would maybe become familiar with that. I think that
Okay.
it is very much a down the center exposition of the an approach to writing, which
What's it
is
called again?
the art of fiction.
Got it.
John Gardner, Gardner, I
Got it.
believe. Uh, he wrote a couple. He wrote a few novels. Grendel, I don't know if you've heard of that, but then I think he died somewhat recently. I think he was writing mostly in the 60s, 70s, something around that time. He wrote also another book on what is called On Moral Fiction. He had fairly traditional views on literature, not to the point of being starchy, I would say, but it's more traditional. So it's just a great primer for clarifying what fiction does and what people might do with fiction. Uh, and it's very accessible, but also not simplistic at the same time. And I
Got
think
it.
it even
Okay.
offers, towards the end, it offers prompts or exercises, even more formal, more workshop style, they're not too cloying or heavy-handed or anything, but it's just, I'm thinking of, yeah, a great reference if you just want something to be able to look at and get a better idea of what you might want to do. I think that's pretty solid. But then apart,
Nice.
apart from that, as far as your own approach, that's so hard. I really don't. The one thing that I'm less sure about now than ever is what to tell people about writing, and especially bringing up kids or adolescence. I don't know what to tell them. Writing for me has become something that is off such a beaten path, and I don't know what is going to work for others because I've been able to see so many different things work for so many different
Yeah.
people. Whoever can, it's I don't know. The formulas, I'm really not sure. I don't know, and I'm alienated from popular taste too. I really do feel
Yeah.
like I'm out in a shack half the time. If I were suddenly faced with, oh, now you have to inspire this group of, I don't know what grade you teach, but
Freshman.
yeah, so this group of 14 or 15-year-olds, you've got to instill them with this love or passion for self-expression. I don't know. I'm a little weird. This it's
No,
probably
you're
isn't.
good.
No, I'm not a real educator, but I don't know why my instinct is to make it difficult for them. I would want to almost try to present it as something that is not for everyone, that you should be very careful with. I don't know.
Yeah, I think probably the way I would go at it. I mean, the educating is my job,
Yeah,
and in a sense, I take what you're thinking and like, how are you going to go about it? I would simply go about it like I do with everything with these freshmen, which is overwhelming ambition and overwhelming enthusiasm. And I'm literally like, all right, guys, let's go. We're taking the Holy Land. Die
yeah,
for the Empire. Let's go.
yeah,
And it's just, if it clicks, perfect. It's obviously for you. If it doesn't
yeah,
click, that's all right. Find
yeah,
something else, or
Right.
do it different. It's not that all these kids have to be great writers, or
yeah.
I'll go be the next Dostoevsky or whatever, but just learn how to do it, have some fun. And I don't know what I'm doing, you don't know what we're doing, but by God, I can swing a hammer pretty goddamn hard, so here we go.
Right.
I don't know. I think you nailed it, Caleb. If I were to get, first of all, the book Caleb mentioned is actually great. I think I have it on my shelf somewhere.
Nice. Okay, good.
Another kind of book on like writing, more pop fiction is Techniques of a Selling Writer by Dwight Swain. I'll shoot you a link.
Techniques of a selling writer.
Yeah, it's more of a like pulp fiction kind of like pop fiction type of book. It's more about beats and that kind of stuff. But here's the thing, right? The number one thing, okay, the number one thing you have to kind of get through to people, right, is that I think that if they want to become famous and make money, that's just not going to happen with writing,
Yeah,
right?
don't.
And
That's
even
not.
yeah, the
Yeah,
highest fame in the world that the J.K. Rowling got, I probably wouldn't recognize her on the street, right? Um, but so that's not if that's what you want, you're not going to get it, right? You,
yeah,
these people have to want to write, but most of all, I think the most important thing to get through to people is that if you want to write, you have to love reading, right? The
yeah,
best way to learn how to write is to fucking read. Read everything, all right? Find a few writers that you particularly love. And in the same way, like, I know, Caleb is a musician. You know, we came to music through listening to our favorite bands.
yeah.
And we picked
Yep.
up that guitar, picked up that piano, picked up those drums. We wanted to be that band, whether it be Led Zeppelin or Nirvana or Pearl Jam or, The
Yeah.
Cure or whatever. And that's what we absorbed. We absorbed the milieu and the essence of their music and made it our own, right? That's what a good
You don't
musician
like to
does.
read. You don't
Yeah.
like to read. Get the fuck out of here.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is not for you.
Right. If you're
And
not
that's
reading,
okay. That's okay. Just
Yeah.
you're gonna hate it.
right.
Yeah.
And you have to read wide. All right. You can't just
Mm.
read, you can't just read fantasy because once, books are made of other books, right?
Yes.
And if you're only reading narrow in one genre, you're just going to repeat subconsciously the same stuff that's been seen before.
Yeah.
And I think the best writing takes elements from, a little bit from Dostoevsky
place.
and a little bit from Bolaño and a little bit from, some pop writing of today. And
A little Michael Crichton, a little James Joyce.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And you need to be well read. So that's the key, I think. That is the key to being a good writer. A lot of times you see people like, okay, look, craft and skill, craft like the sentence structure, all that stuff. That's stuff that you can teach. You can teach grammar. You can teach, composition, and you can make somebody into a very proficient writer in the same way you can take anybody and make him into probably a proficient guitar player, right? But the next step is really is an element of spirit, is a combination of it's almost a
Bring more of that to me.
right, you know what I mean?
The focus that people have, some people, I'm not saying this is that widespread, but do you ever notice the way people sometimes nerd out over sentences? It's a little odd to me. The way, I don't know, the preoccupation with sentences.
Right.
Picking out a piece without understanding the whole.
Those sentences. Wait, but what are they talking about? Doesn't that
Yeah,
matter?
right. What's the idea?
Yeah,
Right.
what is the spirit? What's the thumos behind this here? Isn't that
Right, because ultimately they're just scribbles on a piece of paper.
yeah,
They're ink on a paper,
Yeah.
It's
this
the
sounds like
overall concept that matters.
Yeah.
this
Cool. Well, guys,
after school puzzle or something.
Yeah. But yeah, we do got to call it a night because it's already
I just
7:07.
Yeah, I just want to bring that up, but then I also wanted to say, honestly, real quick, just thank you both for your input. I'm going to take it, and I will run with it, and perhaps in a few months or a year, we'll circle back and we'll hear of all my great failure and or success.
Yeah, just tell them read and write. Just don't
Read and
fucking
write,
think about
bitches.
anything else.
Let's
Just
go.
read.
Do it.
Let's fucking go.
All right,
Do it.
before we go, man. Hey, Caleb, thank you once again for
Yeah, man.
for
This
coming
was
on, dude. Like,
Yeah,
This is great.
thanks
we've
for having
and for everybody listening, go back and listen to episode number 8, where just me and Caleb and we go more into his writing.
Yeah.
If you're in New York and around New York, or you're rich enough to go to New York in the next few weeks, 25th over at Sovereign House. And dude, go on Amazon or wherever and pick up Hardly Working. It's a fantastic book. All right. And truly, like, I am not blowing smoke up your ass, man. Like, I totally like enjoy your writing, and I've recommended it to so many people, and I've shared it as far and wide as I could. And if you're on Substack, follow Caleb on Substack because his Substack pieces are fantastic. And before we go, do you have anything else to share, Caleb, before we let you go?
I think we've all shared quite enough for the evening. I think that's good. Yeah. No, thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
And you're
Yeah, man,
always
you're welcome.
welcome back, man, because I love just talking about whatever, And remember, guys, the Dostoevsky rule, okay? If your novel is longer than the Brothers Karamazov, you're wrong.
It's too long. Cut it
Good
down.
night, guys.
Good night, guys.